What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and today
I'd
we're
rather watch
taking
him
an
than I
early
guess
look
the other
at
ones.
Onimusha Way of the Sword.
Said he is, yeah. I
Now,
think
it's
I
not a
heard.
coincidence
Shout
that I
out
recently
to
played
Fighting
through the
Cowboy.
first and second game. I mainly did so because I wanted to have an idea of what was going on before jumping
Onimusha.
into the latest iteration of the franchise. You know, it's been 20 years since we've had Onimusha. I wanted to have an idea of...
See, that's what I was saying when I first saw it, though. I was like, Onimusha, from what I remember, they were like a little more panned back. Like now that they're more up close like that, it feels like a Souls game, dare I say?
What was going on with this
more
game.
weight
I
to
wanted
it.
to know how much of it came from the past games, how it evolved, etc. And I'm glad I did, because there were a lot of things that I saw in this where I can directly see the influence
get a
of the
whole
previous
map.
titles. So either way, let's jump in and talk about my experience with it. I had a chance to play for quite a while. I was able to play through the demo as much as I wanted. I can only share 10 minutes of footage, though, so this video is definitely going to be pretty jam-packed, full of info, and rather fast-paced. So jumping in, one of the first things I want to talk about is that this game is not a Souls-like at all. If you had any concerns it was going to be Dark Souls-inspired or whatever the case is, you can put those to rest. This is very much Onimusha through and through. It's going to be single-player action-adventure with a focus around
Sword of
demons.
Legends, PBO,
The high skill ceiling combat is still there, but you know, the Souls-like type things that tend to be pervasive these days in every game. You know, the checkpoints, the loss of resources on death. None of that is in this game, so you can rest assured there.
Where's the one that
but talking
I
about
too,
how
this,
the
that
game
was like
itself
Sekiro.
has evolved and how it stayed true to what Onimusha
that's
is
Phantom
all
Blade
about.
Zero. My fault.
Talking
Yeah,
about our
what's the other
attacks a little
game,
bit.
though,
So we
that
have one-handed
has a
attacks
lot
and
of
two-handed attacks now. Two-handed attacks are kind of
bad.
comparable to the charge attacks from the prior games, where it's more about breaking through the enemy guard. On top of that, we still have the East counters, as you saw right there. Attacking just prior to an enemy hitting you allows you to do an instant counterattack. We can do this against all the basic enemies. We can do this against bosses. The timing for it
not
is
PBO. It's called,
tight, I will say.
It's like
against the boss that we fought in the demo,
what's that shit called? It's a weird. It's like Prophecy or Provision or Pro something.
Against. There were two other
like
attacks where I managed to get one, but I couldn't consistently
game,
do
but
them.
it's
So it was very, very tight timing with that. Besides
One
that,
Piece?
we have two gauges that are tied to parrying as well as
Preventative
dodging.
something.
So if you look down in the bottom right,
what that
notice
game
one
is
of them
called
starting
right
to fill
now.
up. Basically, every time we get a parry
Project
or like a perfect deflect, whatever you want to call it,
something
on an
like
attack,
that shit.
we're going to fill up
that
this
one
gauge,
I'm hyped about
and after
too.
the gauge has filled up a certain amount, our weapon is then going to become wreathed in a blue flame, and it will allow us to do bonus damage. And on top of that, once we get that buff up, any subsequent parry will then also help to maintain that buff.
That parry is
very
crazy.
easy to get that up and maintain it throughout the fight. Now, the perfect dodging, on the other hand, after multiple perfect dodges, usually it takes about 3 to fill up the bar, assuming you're not getting hit in between those, you will then be able to do a special follow-up attack, which will hit the enemy. And typically, the special attacks like these are going to be good at pulling more souls out of the enemy, whether it's blue souls or red souls or whatever the case is. And obviously, different souls have different effects, whether it's helping to fill up your Oni armament gauge, or instead just heal your character or fill up your other gauges. So there's a couple different things going on. But the main gist here is when it comes to play, you know, we have what I would consider to be like a light attack, a heavy attack, a perfect dodge, a perfect parry, and then of course our East counters. Now this is very early in the game, so you know we're talking about all of this at just a base level. But one of the things I did ask about is other weapons. Obviously, those are a core component in the other Onimusha games. And they said that this one is a lot more focused on the katana, but there are other things that we're going to be able to use to basically make our playstyle more flexible, but they didn't want to talk about them just yet. But I think it's going to be the Oni power, which is what you just saw me do. So in this game, we have a third gauge, which you're seeing above the 2 in the corner, and that is our Oni power. And this one pulls out 2 daggers, and as we hit enemies, we have iframes for the entire duration of those attacks. And then on top of that, those daggers are going to pull in a lot of yellow souls. So they're really good for helping to get a heal off in the middle of the fight, just through absorbing the souls. Which, on the note of that, you can now absorb souls while moving. You don't have to stay stationary to absorb them, thank God. That was definitely one of the more frustrating things in the previous iterations of this franchise. But so, and this is all conjecture, but I think we're going to get multiple Oni powers, and swapping through those as we fight is going to be one of the main gameplay elements. At least this is my guess, because I would be extremely surprised if the combat was as simple as just, you know, Ishin counter, parry, dodge, light, heavy, and then 1 yokai power. So I have a feeling we're going to get multiple yokai powers, And
40-minute long
I think
gameplay.
the idea of them
40
is
minutes.
they are meant to function similar to how Magic was in the previous
I have
iterations.
to watch that
where,
tomorrow, honestly.
we'll build up this gauge and then we'll execute them, and that's going to give
gotta
us a
get some,
damage opportunity, along with the opportunity to pull more souls in at the same time. In terms of the overall exploration and whatnot, I do think it feels very Onimusha. I was breaking every pot I could
I am
find,
excited
every,
for the game. They have a
every
release
pot,
date for
every
it?
box, everything that looked like it might have loot, even though most of them did not. But one of the things that I really liked about the exploration now, at least, is just having it open-ended without the tank controls. And the map approach to this is a very overhead type map. You might have remembered
y'all see the Kirby Air Riders?
Start of the video.
I don't know if y'all hyped
And it's not
about
like a
that.
full
That shit look
detailed map.
fire.
Instead, it just kind of gives you an idea of the general layout of the land, and then allows you to freely navigate through that as you explore the world. And that's something I've come to appreciate a lot more in games recently, where you have this overview map that's like, yeah, there's some stuff around, but we're not going to tell you where everything's at. I think it promotes exploration, and that's something I like. But there is a really big emphasis around the posture system now, which you're probably seeing a little bit of in the combat. Basically, outside of the health bars, obviously, anytime we break an enemy's posture, we can go for an Isin break attack, which is like the finisher that you saw. And in that prior clip right there, we ended up getting the stamina down on the first enemy, got the stamina down on the second enemy, and then we were able to do back-to-back executions on those enemies. Another thing that I thought was really cool is as we get parries on enemies, we can also direct them towards objects in the environment. So if we parry somebody and we're near a tree, we can throw them into that tree and cause additional stamina damage and go straight into the stamina break. So there's a lot of just intuitive combat tricks like that have been implemented that I think make this just a really, really satisfying experience. And probably the thing that stood out to me the most was just the flexibility of weaving in our defensive skills. And I guess to call on Sekiro for an example, in Sekiro, there's like certain attacks that you'd want to deflect, there's certain attacks that you'd want to Makiri counter, and then there's certain attacks that you want to jump over. And you don't have to do that here, but if you decide to do that, and what I mean is like, certain attacks parry, certain attacks dodge, certain attacks you go for an Isin, and you're pulling in all of your defensive tools, you're going to have a much stronger experience against bosses. You're going to feel a lot more powerful because you're able to utilize the whole kit. And so while you don't have to, you could just dodge everything or parry everything. By leaning into all your defensive tools and maximizing how you use them in fights, you're going to just have a much better experience. And that's something that I found as I continued to fight the boss multiple times. Briefly, before we get into the boss fight, I will say that I played the game in both Japanese and English just to check the voice acting. I felt the Japanese voices were leagues ahead of the English voices. I'm just putting that out there. Whenever this comes out, 100% playing it in Japanese. But we're going to show off a little bit of the Ganru fight here. Like I said, it can only show 10 minutes of footage. But talking a little bit about the boss, you're going to see clips from a couple different attempts here, because I really found interesting just how dynamic this boss fight can be depending on how you approach it. And you'll see it at the very end. I don't want to just spoil the kill on the boss, but you could just fight through and kill the boss in certain ways, but instead, if you end up, I'll let it speak for itself. But so one thing I want to talk about with the boss, similar to other enemies, there is a posture gauge, and as we work through that posture gauge, we open them up to a break Isin attack. And what's cool with on the bosses is you actually get flexibility in your decision. When the boss is opened up to that Isin break, to that critical attack, we have a split second where we decide, are we going to go for the chest or are we going to go for the arm? And if you go for the arm, you're going to get more souls out of it, which you could then use to power up other attacks. Whereas if you go for the chest, you're just going to get a big burst of damage. And so I thought that was really cool, how we have like a split second decision making in the middle of the fight that'll dictate, how we're going to get damage. So you can see here, breaking the bosses, select a target area, and then depending on what you hit, that's going to determine what happens. So I thought that was pretty cool, because right here I could go for the arm or I could go for the head. Going for the head, obviously, is massive damage. So big burst there.
We'll probably be doing headshots.
But what was even cooler is what you're going to see in just a second here. But the boss fight was definitely satisfying, being able to figure out like what I wanted to parry, what I wanted to dodge, when I wanted to do the Isin counter. And here we're going to see some clips of me just utilizing different combat tools against them as opposed to just parrying my way through everything. You see Isin counter, massive amount of stamina damage coming in from that. And then get the perfect dodge attack off.
Damn, that was clean.
See, generate some blue souls right there. But the big part, and the part that I love the most, check this out. So we're fighting him. He's getting low. He has probably about a third of his health left, right? We get down his stamina. Keep in mind where his health is at. And we get a unique finisher. I love it.
Ooh, hey, I ain't gonna lie.
Like, can we not cast?
Hey, that was a dub. Onimusha is about to be stellar, bruh.